Welcome to Season 5 of the Manufacturers Network. Real talk with the people building what's next in manufacturing. And now your host, Lisa Ryan.
Hey, it's Lisa Ryan. Welcome to the Manufacturers Network podcast. Excited to introduce our guest today, Moustafa Moursy. He is the founder of Push Analytics, a top-tier HubSpot agency helping construction and manufacturing leaders streamline operations, strengthen sales pipelines, and grow profitably. So Moustafa, welcome to the show.
Lisa, thank you for having me.
So share with us a little bit about your background and what led you to doing what you do.
Absolutely. Actually, I've done quite a lot of things in my career. And one of the things that actually led to me having the experience I have today is actually my background in manufacturing. I worked for different manufacturing companies. I worked both in the manufacturing facility at some point and also more on the customer sales side and project management and actually like interfacing more with the projects. And really that a lot of this relies on, it's very important to make sure that you have a lot of your processes and different things lined up in a way where to get everything flowing in a way that makes sense for the business. So you see that a lot, and we do a lot of that at where we're at now, and that's how I got started.
Awesome. So how do you see manufacturing companies using data differently from contractors when it comes to driving operational efficiency?
Yeah, the thing about manufacturing is let's take a step back, right? You have two things that are happening at the same time. You obviously have your actual manufacturing where you have inputs and outputs, and everybody's familiar with that part of it. But what you got to take a step back and realize is that your business across the board is also inputs and outputs, just like your whatever product you're building is inputs and outputs, right? And as a manufacturer, what you're doing, people will focus on the product side where it's like, hey, we got to focus on this many inputs to get this much output. But it's the same thing with the overall business. And there's a lot of different things that you can look at there. So you have obviously the sales side, the operations side, the follow-up side, the quoting side, quantifying and understanding where the different inputs are for your system is really key. And I'm talking about for your business system is really key to being able to get a better outcome on the outputs and have a little bit more control on the outputs.
So what's one process that you're seeing that manufacturers often overcomplicate that if simplified could have an immediate impact on their productivity?
Yeah, so I've seen this kind of go both ways. Sometimes people will overcomplicate, sometimes people will undercomplicate, but I think a lot of times you'll see when it comes to sales, like the sales side of the process, and I was very familiar because I worked at a large org. Sales was a big part of things, and there was changes in the sales process as I was there. And when it comes to sales, you find two camps. A lot of times you find people who are like, yeah, whatever, we don't have any real sales process. Or you find people who are like, we're going to make the sales reps do this and this and this and this and this and this and overcomplication galore. And both are not the right approach. I was involved in cases where hey, like we have something that works, and then it's okay, we got to layer in this, and you got to fill in this screen, you got to fill in that screen, you got to fill in this screen. And it's, wait a minute, why do we have to fill in 10 screens when we didn't used to do this? And it's not really adding anything, and we're not doing anything with this information anyways. And people will just end up in a bad position because when you have that disconnect between the people who are driving the system and the people who are using the system, and they're so far apart, then you end up with essentially garbage in, garbage out, right? People kind of just put stuff to get to the next point. You would hear stories of that, and then nothing is really working as intended. I think finding that right balance is really key. And I think a lot of times you see this issue come up on the sales side. And again, the other side's not good either, where it's like, hey, our sales reps just do whatever they do. They use their cell phones every day, just make calls. And we don't have any system to track of what they're doing, but they're doing fine because that's how you leave stuff on the table as well.
So are you talking about from a CRM standpoint that they want the reps to use the CRM, and some of them they undercomplicate it because they don't use it at all, and then others, that's where the companies are trying to make them put in all kinds of information that's...
Yeah, a lot of it is CRM driven for sure. Some of the CRMs are, so a lot of it is CRM driven. It's not only the CRM. I mean, there's other aspects of the process that go into it too. You might have other tools. If you're manufacturing, you might be having your reps like in your ERP, for example, doing different things, like maybe to generate the quote, maybe to do whatever. And in a scenario like that, for example, you would want to make your process seamless. There's often a lot of things that do need to be done. You want to make sure that they're laid out in a way where they're being done in a way that's not overtaxing a certain department that doesn't need to be overtaxed. If in some cases, maybe it's like the separation between the sales reps and the application engineers who are maybe working a little bit more on the technical details of a quote. So depending on the company. But a lot of it, yes, a lot of it does come down to CRM. Some people have like very heavy requirements on their CRM for what they want sales to put in. And just knowing how salespeople work and how salespeople are trying to get a million things done in a day. And if it's not like good enough or if it's just too much, then they just default to either not doing it or just doing whatever. And then on the flip side of it, you have people who are like, we don't even need a CRM. Our sales reps are fine. And then it's like, but they couldn't tell you how many quotes that they haven't followed up on. Like, how can they follow up better on their quotes? How can they actually dial things up? They couldn't tell you because they don't have that information either. So it's not really about over-engineering or under-engineering. It's about, you really have to find that right balance. And that's what's really important. And like when we do a lot of this HubSpot work and stuff like that, we actually don't start by looking at, let's jump in HubSpot. We say, hey, let's zoom out, let's take a step back and let's look at what we need to do as a business, lay that out, start cleaning that up, and then decide what features do we need from what tool and how we want to implement it, right? Because you need that solid map. And I've given different talks on this. I give a TEDx talk talking about the process of making a process. And one of the things that we would say in that talk is like a few of the early steps is you need to understand where you are. You need to understand where you want to go. And then you need to build a map that gets you there. And then you start executing. So it's like that same approach when you're talking about building out your sales process for, especially manufacturing.
Well, and I think about it, I don't think there's a salesperson on the planet that likes to do paperwork.
And I was a salesperson myself, so I say salespeople are often process resistant, right? Not everybody, but a lot of them just, hey, like I'm already dealing with all this stuff from customers and I don't want to add more stuff. There's always a little bit of it might not be 100%, like, okay, they might still have to do a little bit more than what they maybe want to, but at the same time, you can still get it to where it's organic, where it's useful for them, where it's okay, like they don't have to do anything that's unnecessary, cut it out and just put, okay, listen, like we really do need you to put these pieces of info and here's why. So having people also know why it's theirs is also pretty cheap.
And I also think that getting your sales reps involved in the process when you first start implementing the system so you can see what is it that you would be most helpful to you, because I know it took me years, and I'm just using from a CRM standpoint, making myself sit down first thing in the morning and open up my CRM. And I tell you, there's not a lot that falls through the cracks when you just get in the habit of using it. But I'm also probably using about 5% of the capacity, but that's what I need. And that's what gets the job done. So just because you have 100% capacity in something doesn't mean that you should force your salespeople to do that. Listen to what they need, and they're much more likely to use it.
Absolutely. No. And that's one of the things we will say when setting up a process for anything. It could be for sales, it could be for the operations side, it could be for the actual manufacturing side as well, is like you want to get key stakeholders involved and talk to them, right? Because a lot of times you'll have people in organizations who it's like, they'll set up processes for things that they've never even got remotely close to doing, right? Imagine if somebody worked at like a financial institution or something, and then they come in and then they're like, okay, we're going to revamp our sales process for, I don't know, selling phones. And it's, wait, that's fine. And he might have some great insight, but it's, have you talked to the people who are selling the phones to just see what their challenges are? Like, so you got to get some input from the stakeholders, and that's advice we'll usually give. You don't have to have the whole sales team on. Usually it's like, you might have one or two people who are more like interested in these kind of things or more involved in this type of things. Like some people are just like, I don't want to, just let me know when it's done and let me know what I need to do. But you'll usually have like certain people in the org who are more into it. So you bring them on, get some idea for what their obstacles are and try to solve for some of that. In addition to, though, obviously taking into account what other sides of the business might need on the back end as well.
Right. And having worked with both contractors and distributors, what patterns do you see in how successful manufacturers manage their supply chain relationships?
Yeah. And I would call those, so obviously when we say supply chain, it's more about like actually getting the parts needed to build. But yeah, for sure, on the commercial side or the value chain, maybe let's call it that, it's almost just as important to manage that as it is to manage your actual physical supply chain. Going back to what we were saying earlier, the being able to have like a coherent strategy for how you're going to incorporate like each piece of the value chain is really key in the manufacturing. And it's also what makes what we said earlier, like focusing on the sales process, especially as a manufacturer, like really key. Like you want to make sure you're accounting for each of the things. And hey, are we following up with the distributor? Like how involved do we want the distributor to be? What's our cadence for making sure that we're like nothing's falling between the cracks between us and a given distributor? And then, hey, are we following up with the direct contractor, like / customer? How involved do we want to be with any given customer? There's going to be variations. You might have different accounts where it's, hey, we're more involved. Other accounts where it's like the distributor's more involved. And how do we delineate that? So having all that kind of like having a strategy and tactics for all of that is like really key to make sure that everybody's activated the right amount and putting in the right amount and making sure that you're having the best outcome and have coherent experience for the customer at the end of the day.
So how can manufacturers better align their sales and production teams using tools like HubSpot or other analytics platforms?
Yeah, and I would say whether it's HubSpot or something else, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're identifying exactly what your needs are. And that's what I was alluding to earlier. You want to sit down. If let's say we were doing a process improvement for somebody, we would be like, look, tell me what you're doing today. I always tell people, tell me what you're doing today. And there's no wrong answer. It doesn't matter if you're like, we scribble stuff on a napkin and hand it to the customer and that's how we quote them. That's fine. I want to know what you're doing today because I want to know where we are so that we can start figuring out how do we get to where we want to be, right? So I think identifying like, hey, what are we doing today? What are some of the things where we're having some obstacles? Asking those questions. And then from those questions, starting to be like, okay, we want to get to a better place where maybe we follow up more on quotes or we do this or we do whatever, right? And we start looking at what tools do we need to get us there? So that's usually how we look at it is like, we call it like a business first approach, not a tools first approach. It's not, oh, like, I'm going to get this tool and I'm going to figure out how to use it. I'm going to go figure out what my business needs and where I need to drive improvement and then go plug in the right tool. If we find a lot like now, especially because everybody's sold features now, right? So we find a lot now, people actually have this problem where it's like, hey, we have this tool and it's like, there's so many features. I don't know how many features. I don't know if we're using the right number of features and like whatever. I'm like, relax. Don't even look at the features. Don't worry about the features. Like we need to make sure we're using the features we need. It's not about a % utilization of features. You can have a tool that you buy and they keep adding features and features. Maybe you bought it for 2 things. I know it has 100 features. It doesn't mean that you should be using the 100 features. It might not even make sense for you to use the 100 features. But it's like, because people like don't know and because everybody's always, feature, they feel like, am I behind? And they kind of chase features as opposed to like actually what the business needs. And that ends up being a problem.
That's such a good point because I know how little of the capacity of my own CRM that I use. And sometimes there's a little bit of guilt there. Can I be doing something better? But again, it does exactly what I needed to do. I'm comfortable with it. It might be nice, but it's not going to make or break me if I go and add a couple more features. So I think that what you just alluded to of getting rid of the guilt factor and just figure out, because there's going to be some people that are going to use 5%. There's going to be other people that are going to use 35% of the capacity. Let people figure out what works for them and works for the business. But I like that business approach first.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you're at a position where you have your kind of like main plan laid out and your main, okay, here's what we're trying to accomplish, then you have a very good place to benchmark any possible new feature against. So let's say you have everything written out, you have it all mapped out and you're like, this is what we fixed for the first time. And then they tell you, hey, we launched this new feature. And you're like, okay, does this help with any of the things that we previously identified? It doesn't. Okay, whatever. Oh, okay, it does. Then maybe we can look at it. So you have like also a little benchmark too, in case you did want to assess new features that you could go back and see, is it useful? Is it not? Yeah, absolutely.
So what's one area of manufacturing that you think is ripe for digital transformation, but really hasn't caught up yet?
I think it depends from industry to industry and from manufacturing company to manufacturing company. Usually there's so many different ways, like there's so many different like setups, I would say, for manufacturing companies. Some are bigger, some are smaller. And people are focusing on different things, but I'll tell you where we've seen like sometimes gaps. A lot of times in the sales process. I think the sales process, if I had to pick one, it would be the sales process in the sense because manufacturing is very intricate as far as sales goes. And people aren't like necessarily properly, No, I was gonna sneeze, but I didn't. No, I didn't. Okay. Anyway, people aren't necessarily accounting for the proper sales process, like with all the little nooks and crannies of the sales process to make sure that things aren't falling between the cracks. Hey, are we engaging with the distributor? Are we engaging with the contractor? Are we like keeping track of all the different changes that we might make on a project? Are we keeping track of what like the original was? Are we keeping track of what they released to manufacturing? That's another issue that sometimes I run into. Oh, or like they release something and then they say, this is what we released and we don't even have a good track of it. So we're seeing that. We also see issues though on the, I would say the interface between sales and post-sales. What I call that handoff, onboarding, whatever, like a different people call it different things. But the interface between sales and post-sales tends to be an area where there's issues because especially like, I think in every industry, but especially manufacturing, like a lot of times the salespeople just want to they have a lot on their plate and they want to just get the order through and they're just, okay, I want to move on to the next order. I have a quota. I got to get to the next order, whatever. The problem is what happens is like, then whoever is taking it from there, whether it's project management or if it goes straight to manufacturing and depends on your business, is left trying to figure it out. And you end up having a lot of friction sometimes because from the people working's perspective, I'm sales, you're PM, we're different people. And maybe we didn't talk about it too much. But from the customer's perspective, it's the same company. So it's, wait, you should know this. I told you guys this. You didn't tell me. Oh, okay. But like I told the other guy and like it should flow. So you end up with a lot of friction there and that could cause a lot of issues that actually compound. So sometimes people will come in and be like, hey, they might be like my manufacturing process. Like we're a little messy when it comes to the actual manufacturing process. But then I'm like, okay, but this actually does not, to fix this problem, we actually have to go back to sales. This isn't a manufacturing necessarily contained problem. Things flow downstream. So it flows from sales, it flows to like project management / like that intermediate step. And then it flows into the step where you actually release the equipment and start building it. So you might have an issue at the end of the cycle that you got to go back to the beginning of the cycle in order to actually fix. Maybe it's, hey, sales has to release the order in a certain way, or they have to put it in a certain way, or we have to do something. We have to clean up that part of the CRM a little bit so that the information that flows to you guys is like a little bit more complete. So that's something that we see a lot of people are not really paying attention to, and it's getting something that can work for them. I think would save a lot of agony.
Okay. So in your experience, where are most manufacturers leaving money on the table? Is it in marketing, quoting, follow-up? What are you seeing?
I think I've seen all of those. It's not, follow-up is obviously on the sales side really important. I think some people really underestimate lead. Like I was in a place where like you might have had to follow up. You have to follow up with somebody like 5 times, 10 times, and it's not like they don't want to work with you. It's just that they're busy, right? And it's just like things are coming up and another project happens and then they get distracted and then you call them, oh yeah, I feel like it's still going on, waiting. So follow-up is really key. I think marketing, I've seen a lot where like a lot of manufacturers, like they don't really understand, they don't have a good way of like how to do marketing in a sense. Like again, it's very intricate and then you have your distributors and you have your contractors and who you're actually marketing to and who do you got a list of. So they don't have a cohesive, zoomed out, like what is our actual marketing plan, right? So I think that's another place where people are underutilizing. But so between those two, I think follow-up is honestly probably the easiest one to fix. You incorporate something into your process where you have visibility on things and there's a cadence and you're getting people used to following up. The one thing I've noticed is for certain people, it's like intuitive that you have to follow up. I was fortunate to work in a really good sales team. Like we were always like crushing it. So it was like the culture. Oh, what do you mean? Like you got to follow up. We had weekly meetings that we would go in and we would talk about like projects and basically internally, and then everybody would know that they have to follow up. But then what's interesting is like sometimes I'll talk to people now and it's, hey, you got to follow up with this. Hey, people even on my team, hey, you got to follow up with this. Hey, okay, I didn't want to annoy him. I'm like, you're not annoying him. Like he's just, and then it would end up happening. Oh, I followed up and turns out he needs help, but he was busy with this. I'm like, yeah, it's like I was saying, you're not annoying them. People are just busy until they tell you, hey, I'm not interested. Thank you. Or, hey, this is gone. Or, hey, I am interested. Then, you're expected that you need to follow up. And it was like a little funny story. I was talking to somebody and I was consulting with them, helping them with like their software for something that they wanted to implement. And he was telling me that like they ended up using this other software that's not like super ideal. And there was another software that probably would have been a better fit for them. And he was like, look, the software was great. We were ready to go. But you know what? The guy didn't follow up. So I didn't buy it. And it was like the most like real, like direct that anybody's ever told me. He just didn't like that the guy didn't follow up. I guess he felt like the guy wasn't interested or whatever. So like he stopped following up. So I didn't buy it. Went with this other thing, which wasn't even that good, by the way. And then I was there trying to help him make the second thing work. So it's pretty interesting. People almost like subconsciously expect you to follow up. In this case, the guy was pretty conscious about it. So he just told me straight out. That was the one time I heard that.
Yeah. And I think I see that a lot. I do some sales training as well. And that's what I hear all the time. I don't want to annoy them or whatever. It's like, you're not annoying them, because if you're following up, especially after the order and something's wrong, they're giving you the opportunity to fix it and you're going to be a hero. If you follow up and it's going well, then you have the opportunity to get more referrals. But like you said, if you're not following up, number one, you don't know what's going on. You're not building a relationship with that customer, and somebody else is going to get the deal. It's simple sales math, but it's surprising how many people think that they're just annoying people when they're doing their job of following up.
Yeah. And that's why I think there's people that have really good sales intuition. Like I said, I was like around them when I first started sales. So then you can kind of just absorb it. But a lot of people have never been taught that intuition. So it doesn't come organically for them. And I would say there's two types of people there's three types, right? There's people that know it's important, they're going to do it. And then there's people who like know it's important and they think they're doing it, but they're not doing it effectively. And oftentimes because they don't have a good way of writing stuff. So maybe you do have that good intuition, but you're like, okay, everything's in my head. And like, I've run into that a lot too. Like really good salespeople, hey, everything's in my head. I don't need a CRM. I don't need to write anything down. I don't need to do anything. And listen, they might be pretty good with keeping track of stuff. So they might be like, hey, maybe they have a 90% track record. Problem is 90%, if you're working on, I don't know, 100 projects, that's 10 projects that you fall between cracks, right? And then in manufacturing, like one or two of those, I mean, we would have orders that are hundreds of thousands or more. So it's like, maybe one of those would have been a multi-$100,000 order. Maybe it was $500,000 order. And it's like, because you didn't follow up, you just lost $500,000, right? So it's, yes, I'm sure you have a great memory and maybe you're 90% accurate, which is pretty damn good, but like that 10% might cost you, right? So you have those people, and then obviously the people that they don't even have the intuition for it. Like they feel, oh, I'm just being annoying or being weird and whatever.
Right.
One of our sales managers, what he used to say when we'd have our weekly meeting is he would say something like, somebody would be like, oh, I haven't heard back on this order. I don't think we got it. Oh, have they told you that? No, I haven't heard back. So I'm assuming we didn't get it. Don't assume. You call them until they tell you that you didn't get it, then that's fine. A lot of times it wouldn't be true. There would just be some issue and then you can resolve it and you can actually get the order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we're getting to the end of our time together, what advice would you give to manufacturers who are struggling to bridge the gap between traditional operations and data-driven decision-making?
Yeah, so the general kind of advice with obviously incorporating tools, incorporating other things we talked about is like, you want to make sure and you want to really, it's important to understand that software or whatever tool you implement, whatever, is just that, it's a tool. And in order for things to really work, it's not just having the nice and fanciest tool and the nice and fanciest CRM or the nice and fanciest features in the CRM. It's having the tools set up in a way that match kind of like your business and also having your business set up in a way that's conducive to using the tools. So like that process alignment and having the right culture around utilization of both, right? So it's like a little bit of a triangle. And a lot of times you're like, oh, I got the CRM and my sales are not going up, or this is not happening, or this is not happening. And that's almost akin to being like complaining that, hey, I don't have a shed, even though I bought this fancy toolbox from Home Depot. It's not going to do anything. Yeah, I can build a shed with it, but you need a process around it. You need like people to know how to use the tools, how to know what tools to use, to make sure you have the right tools, to make sure they're in the right spots. You have the right ingredients for the tools to work together to be able to actually get you into a shed. I think a lot of times people will hyper focus on, okay, this tool is going to do everything for us, but they don't zoom out a little bit and be like, it very well can, but it's like, how are we going to incorporate that into our business process? How are we going to modify our business process to make sure it's conducive to using the tool? And then how are we going to make sure, most importantly, that the culture for the organization is there such that people are constantly improving and like improving their usage of whatever tools and like learning how to put stuff in. And that people will often miss one. Like some people understand the process part and they understand the tool part, but they miss the culture part. You get on one call and your sales reps are like, I'm busy, or they just forget, and then you kind of just forget about it. But it's a call. It's not a one shot. It's okay, guys. Let's do a meeting every 2 weeks. Let's go through what you put in the tool. Let's talk about any questions. Anybody needs any more training, right? You got to do all three together for you to actually have proper success with this.
If somebody did want to continue the conversation or find out a little bit more about how you can help them, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
We'd absolutely love to help anybody that wants to talk. You can just message us very easy at hello@pushanalytics.com. If you just send an email and say you came from the podcast, the team will know to route to me. And we'd be happy to jump on even just a consult call with you to help you think through how you want to do this.
All right. Moustafa, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been awesome having you on the show.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Lisa.
I'm Lisa Ryan, and this is the Manufacturers Network Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Manufacturers Network Podcast. If this conversation gave you something to think about, share it with someone else who will get it. And hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next.